Welcome to Galactic Nova Stories, where cosmic emotions come to life. Your journey begins now. The diplomatic mission to Proxima Centauri b had started with such promise. After decades of interstellar messages, humans were finally meeting the Lumians face to face. Lieutenant Ren Walker stood at attention aboard the Earth vessel Harmony as Captain Ellis greeted the tall, luminescent beings who glided into the airlock chamber. "We welcome you in peace," Captain Ellis said, executing the practiced greeting gesture, right palm open, left hand over heart. The lead Lumian, whom they had come to know as Speaker, mimicked the gesture with fluid grace. Its skin shimmered, with patterns of light that their linguist still couldn't fully interpret. "Your journey brings joy," Speaker replied in halting English. "We share knowledge now." Everything was proceeding according to protocol until the ship's environmental alert blared. Ren's eyes darted to the atmospheric readout on his wrist display. Something was wrong with the air composition in the chamber. "Captain," he said urgently, "oxygen levels are dropping rapidly." Captain Ellis frowned. "Our systems were calibrated for Lumian physiology. This shouldn't be happening." The Lumians seemed unbothered, their shimmering intensifying as if in excitement. With mounting horror, Ren realized what was happening. The Lumians were absorbing oxygen at an incredible rate, seemingly unaware that humans required it to survive. "Their oxygen sinks," wheezed Science Officer Maya Patel as she stumbled. "Their biochemistry consumes oxygen." One by one, the human delegation began to falter. Ren reached for his emergency breathing kit, only to find it missing from its designated compartment. The Lumians watched with curious pulses of light as the humans gasped and collapsed. Captain Ellis managed to hit the emergency lockdown, sealing the Lumians in the airlock chamber, but it was too late. The oxygen levels throughout the front section of the ship had plummeted to dangerous levels. "Evacuate to the central hub," Ellis ordered, before losing consciousness. Ren grabbed the captain and began dragging him toward the pressure doors. Through his darkening vision, he spotted Maya Patel crawling desperately toward the exit, her movements growing weaker with each passing second. Ren's lungs burned. His muscles screamed for oxygen that wasn't there. Protocol dictated saving the captain first, but Maya was closer to death. The rational part of his brain, the part trained through years in the Earth fleet, told him to follow protocol. The key captain was irreplaceable. Yet something deeper, something quintessentially human made his decision for him. He propped Ellis against the wall and staggered toward Maya, whose movements had ceased entirely. Her lips were turning blue. With trembling fingers, Ren pulled his personal breathing mask from his utility belt, his last resort with only enough oxygen for one person to reach safety. The mask would save only one of them. Without oxygen, neither would survive more than another minute. Through spotted vision, Ren looked at Maya's still form, then at the breathing mask in his hand. In that moment, something the Academy instructors had called humanity's greatest weakness and greatest strength took over. Ren Walker made a decision that no algorithm would have computed as optimal. Maya's eyelids fluttered weakly as Ren pressed the breathing mask against her face. He triggered the flow of oxygen and watched as her chest rose in a desperate inhale. Color slowly returned to her ashen features. "What are you doing?" she managed, voice muffled beneath the mask. Her eyes widened with understanding as she saw Ren's own desperate gasping. Ren couldn't respond. Saving breath was now his only priority. His vision tunneled dangerously as he hooked his arm under Maya's shoulder and began moving them both toward the central hub where emergency oxygen supplies waited. Each step was agony, each breath insufficient. "Take turns," Maya insisted, pulling the mask away and pressing it to Ren's face. "Breathe." Ren's instinct was to refuse, but survival logic overrode his sacrifice. He took one deep, desperate breath, feeling the blessed oxygen flood his system, before pushing the mask back to Maya. 3 steps. 1 breath, he gasped. Together they established a rhythm, 3 desperate steps forward, then a single precious breath from the mask. Pass, inhale, pass, stagger forward. The 100 meters to the central hub stretched before them like an impossible marathon. Behind them, Alerts flashed as the Lumians' containment field in the airlock began to destabilize. The ship's AI announced in an eerily calm voice, "Warning, environmental contamination spreading to sectors 4 through 7. All personnel evacuate immediately." Maya stumbled, and Ren caught her with strength he didn't know he still possessed. The mask slipped from her fingers, clattering to the floor. Ren scooped it up, took the briefest of breaths, and pressed it back to Maya's face. Through the transparent sections of the corridor, Ren could see other crew members rushing toward safety, some already wearing emergency breathing apparatus, none diverted to help. Standard protocol in an atmospheric emergency was to secure yourself first. Ren's muscles began to fail as oxygen deprivation took its toll. He stumbled against the wall, dragging Maya with him. His vision narrowed to a pinpoint, his hearing reduced to the thundering of his desperate heart. Maya pushed the mask to his face again. "Almost there," she wheezed. "Don't you dare give up." The pressure door to the central hub appeared ahead, tantalizingly close yet impossibly far. Ren's legs gave out completely. He collapsed to his knees, still pushing Maya forward. "Go," he mouthed, unable to produce sound anymore. Maya's face contorted with determination. Instead of leaving him, she grabbed his uniform collar and began dragging him. Her own strength was returning with each breath from the mask, while his ebbed away. The last thing Ren saw before consciousness fled was Maya's face, fierce with determination, as she pulled him towards safety with one hand while holding the breathing mask between them with the other. "Together," she insisted, "or not at all." As darkness claimed him, Ren's final thought wasn't fear for himself, but wonder at the stubborn, illogical tenacity of human connection. In that moment, their shared breaths became something more than survival. They became a testament to what made humanity different. Ren awoke to the steady beep of medical equipment and the sensation of an oxygen mask sealed to his face. His lungs expanded painfully with each breath, but the burning desperation was gone. Through blurry vision, he saw the medbay's ceiling, its usually pristine white surface now covered with emergency lighting strips pulsing amber. "He's conscious," came a voice. "Dr. Amara, the ship's chief medical officer." A face appeared above him. Captain Ellis, sporting a similar oxygen mask, and a nasty gash across his forehead. "Walker," he said, voice muffled but audible. "Good to have you back." Ren tried to speak, but his throat felt scraped raw. He settled for mouthing a single word. "Maya." "Officer Patel is stable," Dr. Amara replied, checking something on her medical tablet. "You both suffered severe hypoxia, but her exposure was less intense thanks to your unorthodox sharing arrangement." Captain Ellis's expression was unreadable behind his mask. "That was against protocol, Lieutenant. The oxygen masks are calibrated for single-user survival scenarios." Dr. Amara shot the captain a sharp look. "And yet, they both survived when our models predicted neither would." Ren finally managed to croak out a question. "The Lumians?" Ellis's face darkened. "Contained for now, but there's a bigger problem." He gestured toward the viewport. With effort, Ren turned his head. Through the transparent aluminum, he could see not the usual starfield, but the mottled surface of Proxima Centauri b. They had landed, or crashed. "We lost propulsion systems when the environmental crisis spread to engineering," Ellis explained. "We had no choice but to make planetary fall. We're grounded, Walker, on an alien world where the atmosphere is toxic to us and apparently delicious to the natives." Ren tried to process this. The Harmony hadn't been designed for planetary landings. That they'd survived at all was a miracle of engineering. "The Lumians," he asked again, "still aboard in isolated containment. We can't release them without risking our own air supply, but we can't keep them contained indefinitely either." Ellis sighed heavily. "And there's something else. Their kind has detected us. We're surrounded." Dr. Amara helped Ren sit up slowly, and he could now see the full medbay. Every bed was occupied with crew members in various states of distress. Some wore oxygen masks like his own. Others were enclosed in full environmental suits with independent air supplies. "Our reserves?" Ren asked, dreading the answer. "Oxygen. Recyclers are functioning at 30% capacity," Ellis replied grimly. "We have perhaps 7 days of breathable air, assuming we implement strict rationing immediately. The implications sank in. 7 days on a planet where they couldn't breathe the atmosphere, surrounded by beings whose very presence depleted their most precious resource. Maya appeared at the doorway, leaning heavily on a mobility frame but standing on her own. Her eyes found Ren's, and a silent understanding passed between them. "Captain," she said, her voice stronger than Ren's had been, "I have a theory about the Lumians. I don't think they meant to harm us. I think they were excited." Ellis frowned. "Explain." "Their bioluminescence increased when our oxygen levels dropped," she continued. "I've analyzed the spectral patterns from the encounter footage. They weren't attacking, they were communicating, maybe even celebrating." Ren suddenly understood. "They thought they were giving us something we wanted." Maya nodded. "Exactly. What if oxygen is to them what something else is to us? A pleasure? Not a necessity." A slim hope began to form in Ren's mind. If they could communicate this fundamental misunderstanding, perhaps there was a way forward, a way to survive. The emergency council convened in the med bay, the only space with sufficient oxygen enrichment for extended conversation. Captain Ellis sat at the head of the makeshift table, Maya and Ren to his right, and Chief Engineer Thomas and Communications Officer Lin to his left. All wore portable oxygen masks, pausing occasionally to take carefully measured breaths. "Our situation is critical," Ellis began without preamble. "Life support can maintain minimum oxygen levels for 7 days. Repairs to the propulsion system would take weeks we don't have, and our distress beacon will take years to reach Earth." "What about the shuttle?" Thomas asked. "Damaged during landing," Ellis replied. "We're effectively stranded." Maya activated her tablet, projecting a molecular diagram into the air between them. "I've been analyzing the Lumian physiology based on readings from their containment area," she said. "They don't just absorb oxygen. They convert it into another compound which they appear to use for energy and communication." Ren leaned forward. "The light patterns on their skin?" "Exactly," Maya nodded. "Their bioluminescence intensifies with oxygen consumption. I believe it's a form of expression for them, possibly even euphoric." Communications Officer Lin frowned behind her mask. "So they were essentially getting high off our air. From their perspective, they were sharing something pleasurable," Maya corrected. "The tragedy is that what gives them pleasure kills us." Captain Ellis's expression remained grim. "Fascinating, but how does this help our survival?" Ren had been quiet, his mind working through possibilities. "What if we could communicate our need?" he suggested. "Not just with words or gestures, but demonstrate it physiologically." Maya's eyes lit with understanding. "Yes. Show them what happens to us without oxygen. Make them understand it's not a pleasure but a necessity." "And how do you propose to do that without risking more lives?" Ellis demanded. Ren and Maya exchanged glances. The same thought had occurred to both of them. The shared breathing mask that had saved their lives could now save the entire crew. "We need to create a controlled demonstration," Ren said carefully. "A way to show them our dependency without endangering anyone." Lin tapped her fingers thoughtfully on the table. "Our translation algorithms have mapped about 60% of their light language. If we combine visual demonstration with the linguistic framework we've established, we need to speak their language," Maya finished, "both literally and metaphorically." Ellis looked unconvinced. "And if they don't understand? If they see our weakness and decide to exploit it?" An uncomfortable silence fell over the group. The captain had voiced their deepest fear, that showing vulnerability to an alien species might be their final mistake. Ren took a careful breath from his mask before speaking. "With respect, Captain, we don't have the luxury of mistrust. In 7 days we suffocate unless we find another solution." "What exactly are you proposing, Lieutenant?" Ellis asked. "A meeting. 1 human, 1 Lumian. Controlled environment. We demonstrate our oxygen dependency, while Lin translates both in words and by mimicking their light patterns with our technology." "Who would take such a risk?" Chief Engineer Thomas asked. Before Ellis could respond, Ren straightened in his chair. "I will." Maya immediately shook her head. "Your lungs are still compromised from the exposure. It should be me." "Neither of you is in condition," Dr. Amara interjected, And I can't authorize, it has to be someone they've already encountered, Wren insisted. Someone they've already communicated with, however inadvertently. Captain Ellis surveyed his officers, understanding the gravity of what they were proposing. Finally he spoke. We'll take precautions, maximum safety protocols, and we'll use both of you, Walker and Patel. You've already demonstrated your ability to share resources and communicate under pressure. As the council adjourned, Wren caught Maya's eye. Without words, they acknowledged what lay ahead. Another dance with suffocation, another test of human endurance, but this time, deliberately chosen. The fate of the entire crew would rest on their ability to communicate the most human of necessities to beings who experienced it entirely differently. The preparation took 12 hours. 12 precious hours of oxygen consumption, while Engineer Thomas modified a standard airlock to serve as a communication chamber. The design was elegant in its simplicity. A transparent barrier would divide the room, allowing visual contact without atmospheric mixing. On the human side, oxygen could be precisely controlled. On the Lumian side, their natural atmospheric preferences would be maintained. Wren and Maya underwent intense briefing, with Lynn memorizing key phrases and concepts they would need to convey. Dr. Amara fitted them with specialized monitoring equipment that would transmit their physiological responses directly to a display visible to the Lumians. Remember, Lynn cautioned, their understanding of time is different from ours. Be patient and repetitive with crucial concepts. Captain Ellis conducted a final review of the protocol. At the first sign of serious distress, we abort. No heroics. Understood? Wren nodded, though privately he wondered what constituted serious distress in a demonstration specifically designed to show their oxygen dependency. When the time came, Wren and Maya entered their side of the chamber together. They wore minimal clothing to allow the Lumians to observe their physiological responses more clearly. Skin color, chest movement, distress signals. Each carried a single shared breathing apparatus with a strictly limited oxygen supply. Ready? Maya whispered. Wren took her hand briefly, squeezing once before releasing it. Ready. On the other side of the barrier, a door slid open. Speaker glided into the chamber, accompanied by 2 other Lumians. Their skin pulsed with complex patterns of light, curious, cautious, but not hostile. Lynn's voice came through the communication system. I've greeted them and explained the basic premise. They're interested. Wren stepped forward, making the formal greeting gesture they'd practiced. We need to show you something important, he said carefully, while Lynn translated both verbally and through light patterns projected on their side of the barrier. Speaker responded with a cascade of light across its torso, which the translation system rendered as, "We observe with openness." Maya activated the chamber controls. A display showed the current oxygen level, normal for humans. This is what we breathe, she explained, pointing to the molecular representation of O2 on the screen beside her. The Lumians' lights pulsed rapidly, excitement according to Lynn's whispered interpretation in their earpieces. Yes, Wren confirmed. This is what made you feel good during our first meeting. Now came the crucial part. Maya's finger hovered over the control that would gradually reduce the oxygen in their half of the chamber. But for us, it is not pleasure. It is life. She pressed the button. The oxygen level began to drop slowly. The first minutes passed without dramatic effect. Wren and Maya breathed normally, though their monitoring equipment showed increasing heart rates as their bodies detected the change. At 70% normal oxygen, both began breathing more deeply, more deliberately. The monitors displayed their blood oxygen levels beginning to fall, represented as a color shift from green to yellow on the large display. Speaker and the other Lumians moved closer to the barrier, their light patterns changing to slower, more focused pulses. They're paying attention, Lynn whispered. Keep going. At 50% oxygen, Wren felt the familiar tightness in his chest, the beginning of the burning sensation in his lungs. Maya's breathing became audibly labored. Their skin began to pale visibly. Without this, Maya explained between increasingly desperate breaths, we die. Not pleasure, necessity. The Lumian's patterns changed dramatically. Speaker placed a limb. Against the barrier, lights moving in a pattern Lin translated as distress concern. When the oxygen level hit 40%, Ren activated their shared breathing apparatus, taking a single breath before passing it to Maya. The monitoring equipment showed their blood oxygen levels temporarily stabilizing before beginning to fall. Again, like our first meeting, Ren managed. Sharing to survive. Speaker's entire body flashed with a pattern so intense that the translation system momentarily overloaded. When it recovered, Lin's voice sounded shaken. I think they understand. They're expressing something like horror, remorse. At 30% oxygen, Dr. Amara's voice came urgently through the comm. That's enough, restore normal levels. But Ren saw something happening on the other side of the barrier. The Lumians were communicating rapidly among themselves, their patterns too complex and fast for the translation system to interpret. Speaker moved to a control panel on their side and manipulated it with precise movements. Suddenly, a section of the barrier developed a small aperture. Before anyone could react, Speaker pressed something against it, a small device that hummed briefly before sealing itself to the human side of the chamber. Alarms blared as the ship's systems detected the breach, but almost immediately, Ren felt a change in the air. The oxygen level display began climbing rapidly, 40%, 50, 60, 70. Speaker's lights formed a pattern that the translator rendered simply as life gift returned. The device Speaker had attached to their side of the chamber was unlike anything humans had ever engineered. It hummed with a subtle vibration, emanating a steady stream of pure oxygen while absorbing carbon dioxide. Within minutes, the chamber's atmosphere had normalized, and both Ren and Maya were breathing easily again. "What is that thing?" Captain Ellis demanded over the comm. Maya approached the device cautiously, scanning it with her tablet. "It's some kind of atmospheric converter," she reported with growing excitement. "Incredibly efficient, it's producing oxygen at roughly 20 times the rate of our best recyclers." Speaker's lights pulsed in what Lin was beginning to recognize as their equivalent of formal speech. The translation came through. "We take life without knowing. We return life with understanding. Balance restored." They think they're making fair amends, Ren realized. They're giving back what they unintentionally took from us. Through the barrier, the communication continued, haltingly at first, then with increasing fluency as both species adjusted to each other's modes of expression. The Lumians explained that oxygen was indeed precious to them, but as a catalyst, for their bioluminescent communication, not for respiration. They absorbed it through their skin and converted it into energy and light. "It seems that meeting a new species," Lin translated Speaker's patterns, "is so rare and special that they unconsciously absorbed more oxygen than normal due to their excitement. They had no idea it was our life source. Ask them about their technology," Ellis instructed. "That device could be our salvation." Through a series of exchanges, they learned that the atmospheric converter was standard technology for the Lumians, who sometimes visited regions of their own planet with different atmospheric compositions. They called it a breath sharer, a term that resonated deeply with Ren and Maya. "They're offering to provide more units," Lin reported, her voice tight with carefully controlled hope. "Enough for the entire ship." Captain Ellis's response was immediate. "Tell them we accept their offer with gratitude." As the discussion continued, Maya moved to stand beside Ren. "You know what this means," she said quietly. "We might not just survive. We might actually complete our mission." Ren nodded, watching the Lumians' graceful movements and intricate light patterns with new appreciation. From disaster to diplomatic breakthrough in less than 2 days. Not bad for a species that doesn't share our definition of breathing. Within hours, teams of Lumians arrived at the grounded Harmony, bringing dozens of the atmospheric converters. Under careful supervision, engineering teams integrated them throughout the ship's life support systems. Oxygen levels steadily rose to normal throughout all decks for the first time since the initial encounter. More remarkable still was the change in the Lumians' behavior. Now aware of human oxygen needs, they modified their own absorption rates when in proximity to humans, creating a neutral zone around themselves that minimized impact on the shared atmosphere. That evening, in the ship's now-safe common area, Captain Ellis raised a cup of synthesized celebration beverage in a toast. To understanding across differences, hand to Lieutenant Walker and Officer Patel, whose shared breathing showed us all how to survive. Glasses clinked around the room. The crisis seemed to be over, but Wren couldn't shake a lingering concern. As the celebration continued, he found Maya at a quiet viewport, gazing at the alien landscape beyond. "We still need to repair the ship," he said softly. "These converters buy us time, but we're still stranded." Maya turned to him, a surprising smile on her face. "Actually, I've been talking with Speaker about that too. It seems the Lumians have more to offer than just breathing technology." "What do you mean?" "Their understanding of propulsion is different from ours, but potentially compatible. They've offered to help with repairs." She hesitated. "They've also offered something else, something bigger." Wren raised an eyebrow questioningly. "A partnership," Maya explained. "Not just diplomatic niceties, but a true exchange of knowledge and technology. Speaker called it breathing together toward the stars." The poetic phrase hung between them, full of possibility. In that moment, Wren understood that their shared breathing mask had become something much more, a powerful metaphor for interspecies cooperation and perhaps the foundation of humanity's greatest alliance among the stars. The days that followed marked an unprecedented exchange of scientific knowledge. What had begun as a desperate survival scenario blossomed into the most productive first contact in humanity's brief interstellar history. The repair efforts to the Harmony proceeded with remarkable efficiency as Lumian engineers worked alongside humans, their complementary approaches yielding solutions neither species would have developed alone. Chief Engineer Thomas found himself constantly astonished by the elegant simplicity of Lumian technology, which often achieved with a single component what human engineering required complex systems to accomplish. "Their entire technological philosophy is different," he explained during one evening briefing. "Where we build complex systems with redundancies and fail-safes, they create adaptive technologies that respond to environmental changes. Their propulsion system doesn't just push against space, it somehow negotiates with it." Captain Ellis frowned. "That sounds more like poetry than physics, Chief." "That's just it, sir," Thomas replied with uncharacteristic excitement. "The line between their science and what we might call their spiritual understanding is almost non-existent. They don't conquer natural forces, they align with them." Meanwhile, Maya and Speaker had established a daily ritual of knowledge exchange. Each morning they met in a specially designed chamber where both could breathe comfortably and shared concepts from their respective scientific traditions. Maya taught calculus and quantum mechanics. Speaker introduced something the translation algorithms struggled to define but eventually labeled pattern harmonics, a mathematical framework that seemed to bridge the gap between discrete and continuous mathematics in ways human theorists had only begun to explore. Wren found himself drawn to these sessions, fascinated by the philosophical implications of their discussions. One morning, as Speaker was explaining their species' understanding of time, which appeared to be non-linear in ways that made Maya's head spin, Wren posed a question that had been troubling him. "Speaker," he asked, "your technology is clearly superior to ours in many ways. Yet you seem genuinely excited by our knowledge as well. What could we possibly offer that you don't already understand?" Speaker's lights rippled in what they had come to recognize as thoughtful consideration. The translation came through. "You mistake advancement for completeness. Your species walks paths ours never discovered, just as we walk paths you never found. The universe offers infinite approaches, but each species follows only one thread of possibility." Maya leaned forward. "You're saying that technological development isn't a single linear progression? That different species might develop entirely? Different branches of science?" "Yes," Speaker's lights confirmed. "And more importantly, the breathing lesson you taught us." "Breathing lesson?" Wren asked, confused. Speaker's pattern shifted to what Lynn had labeled their teaching mode, slower, more deliberate pulses. "When you shared your breathing device with Officer Patel, you demonstrated something our species lost long ago in our development." "Altruism?" Maya suggested. Sacrifice potential, came the translation. The willingness to diminish one's own survival chance to increase another's. This concept exists in our ancient philosophies, but faded from our practical existence as our technology advanced. Individual survival became assumed, guaranteed. We lost the necessity that breeds your kind of connection. The observation struck Ren deeply. You're saying that our vulnerability, our fragility is actually valuable. It is your strength, Speaker's lights pulsed emphatically. The sharing of breath between two who might otherwise perish alone. This principle, applied at larger scales, creates possibilities our species can no longer envision naturally. Your art, your social structures, your emotional bonds, all emerge from this fundamental relationship with necessity. Later that evening, as Ren and Maya walked the perimeter of the ship, now safely able to breathe thanks to Lumion technology, they discussed Speaker's words. It's ironic, Maya said softly. They see our greatest strength in what we've always considered our greatest weakness, our mortality, our constant struggle against hostile environments. Ren nodded, looking up at the alien sky where unfamiliar constellations were beginning to appear. Maybe that's what this is all about. Not just humans learning alien technology, or aliens learning human mathematics. Maybe we're all just learning different ways to breathe in an unforgiving universe. As he spoke, a shooting star, or whatever, passed for one in this alien sky, traced a brilliant path overhead, as if underlining his words with cosmic punctuation. 1 month after the near-catastrophic first contact, the Harmony hovered above Proxima Centauri b, its propulsion systems not merely repaired but enhanced with Lumion technology. The ship now moved with a grace it had never possessed before, its engines humming with a harmony of human engineering and alien innovation. On the bridge, Captain Ellis stood before the assembled crew and a delegation of 7 Lumions, including Speaker. The formal treaty, the first interspecies alliance in human history, had just been signed, its terms displayed on the main viewscreen in both human language and Lumion light patterns. This marks not just the salvation of our mission, Ellis said solemnly, but the beginning of something much greater. 2 intelligent species, breathing together in the vastness of space. He deliberately used Speaker's phrase, which had become something of a motto among the crew. The Lumions responded with synchronized patterns of light that the now sophisticated translation system rendered as approval and celebration. At the back of the bridge, Ren stood beside Maya, both now fully recovered from their ordeal. They wore the formal dress uniforms of Earth Fleet, with one addition, a small insignia depicting 2 intertwined breathing masks, the newly created symbol of the Human Lumion Cooperative. Did you ever imagine, Maya whispered, that nearly suffocating would lead to all this? Ren smiled. I was just trying to keep you alive. Founding an interspecies alliance was definitely not on my mind at the time. As the ceremonies concluded, Speaker approached them, its movements now familiar and almost interpretable, even without the translation system. The 2 who shared breath, it greeted them, lights dancing across its surface. We have a request for you. What kind of request? Maya asked. Our Council of Illumination wishes to understand human culture more deeply. We propose an exchange program. Lumions to Earth, humans to our world. You 2 are our first choice to represent your species. Here, should you accept? Ren and Maya exchanged surprised glances. To stay behind while the Harmony returned to Earth, to be the first humans to live among an alien civilization, was both terrifying and exhilarating to contemplate. We would need to discuss it with Captain Ellis, Ren began. I have already spoken with your captain, Speaker's lights indicated. He suggested you might be amenable. Later, as they packed their few possessions in preparation for their extended stay, Ren paused holding the breathing mask that had saved both their lives. It seemed so primitive now compared to the elegant Lumion atmospheric technology, yet it represented something the Lumions themselves revered. Strange to think, he said, turning the mask in his hands, that our greatest contribution might not be our science or our technology, but our desperation, our need to share resources that seem too limited to share. Maya took the mask from him, examining it thoughtfully. Maybe that's what makes humans special in the universe. Not that we're stronger or smarter, but that we're weaker in just the right ways, ways that force us to connect, to sacrifice, to put others before ourselves. Sometimes. To share our breathing masks when logic says we shouldn't, Ren added with a smile. As the Harmony prepared for its journey back to Earth, carrying news of the Alliance and the first Lumion delegates, Ren and Maya stood with Speaker at a viewport, watching the stars. The breathing mask had been mounted in a special display case, a symbol of the moment when two species began to understand each other through the simple, profound act of shared survival. In your poetry, Speaker's Lights asked, what do you call it when two beings breathe as one? Ren thought for a moment, then answered, I believe we call it love. Speaker's Lights rippled in a pattern they now recognized as deep satisfaction. Then perhaps that is what we are learning from you, how necessity creates the conditions for love across the stars. As the three stood together, breathing the same air that had once divided them, the universe seemed suddenly less vast, less empty, less cold. For what is the cosmos, after all, but an endless sea of possibility in which countless species must learn simply how to breathe together?